Hello, everyone. Welcome to Broken English Club podcast.
Learner, imagine a scenario where failing to do your work doesn't get you fired.
Right, which is usually exactly what happens.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't get you a failing grade either.
Yeah.
Instead, it actually gets you praised for your sheer ingenuity.
It sounds completely backwards, but it's real.
It is. Today, we are looking at the exact mechanics of how to, well, weaponize humor and intellect. The goal here is to make an authority figure basically tear up their own rule book.
And we are pulling our material for this deep dive from a really brilliant comedic script. It's titled The Chronicles of Leo, a masterclass in creative excuses.
Yeah, and we're going to treat this not just as a funny story, but as a legitimate blueprint for high-stakes negotiation.
Because that's exactly what it is. We're analyzing the dynamic between a highly evasive, hyper-intelligent student named Leo and his teacher, Mr. Higgins.
Right.
What this script gives us is a pristine case study in cognitive disruption. We'll be breaking down how you can use linguistic reframing to actually alter reality.
Which is wild to see in action.
Totally. And we'll look at how to pivot a losing battle into an area of personal strength, and even the actual neurological reasons why making your opponent laugh is the ultimate negotiation tactic.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we have to start right at the genesis of the conflict. The initial power dynamic sets the stage for this entire masterclass.
Yeah, the opening scene is crucial.
So, Leo walks into class late. He does not have his assignment. Now, in a traditional classroom environment, this is just a basic arithmetic problem, right?
Right.
Missing work plus tardiness equals a detention and a 0.
Exactly. It is a system built entirely on compliance. You follow the schedule, you produce the work, or you face the penalty. That's the deal.
But Leo just refuses to accept the fundamental premise of that system. He doesn't walk in with his head down, offering, a standard apology.
No, not at all. He actively challenges the framework of the interaction before Higgins can even enforce a penalty.
And Higgins, to his credit, leaves the door open for this. He doesn't just point to his watch and bark an order. He uses sarcasm.
Right, he asks Leo if he's back so soon or just exceptionally early for tomorrow's class.
Which is a subtle intellectual challenge.
Higgins is signaling that he appreciates wordplay. He's tired of the standard, monotonous excuses like, my bus was late. Leo senses that opening and immediately deploys a tactic we call linguistic reframing.
I love this part.
He refuses to admit he is late. He tells Higgins he prefers the term chronologically challenged.
Chronologically challenged is such a brilliant maneuver because he is hijacking the language of legitimate systemic disadvantages and applying it to the mundane act of just oversleeping.
Yeah, he is daring Higgins to argue against a seemingly progressive, sensitive label.
And he immediately stacks another reframe right on top of it. He claims he wasn't oversleeping at all. He and his alarm clock were having a creative disagreement.
Creative disagreement.
Because he was busy dreaming about a world where homework is illegal.
What's fascinating here is the psychological pivot. Leo is actively elevating a mundane failure into a profound philosophical stance. He defends dreaming about a world without homework as a matter of principle. He literally asks Higgins, if I don't stand up for my dreams, who will?
It's so dramatic.
It is. But this isn't just a quirky line. This is deliberate cognitive overload. By transforming himself from a lazy teenager into a principled martyr for the cause of sleep, he forces Higgins to address the philosophy, not the tardiness.
It completely derails the disciplinary track, so Higgins tries to bring it back to earth by threatening to give those principles a Saturday detention.
A classic teacher move.
Yeah, he demands the actual curriculum, the class essays on the impact of industrialization. And Leo does this incredibly theatrical, frantic pocket-padding routine.
Mucking under the desk, padding his jacket.
Creating a massive physical spectacle, exactly.
The theatricality is a crucial component of the evasion, He is manufacturing a micro-crisis to delay the inevitable confrontation over the missing essay.
Then he drops the most tired cliche in the history of education, the whole "my dog ate my laptop" line. But he updates it for the modern era.
Right, he doesn't just say paper, he says laptop.
And Higgins, naturally, questions the mechanics of a biological dog eating a piece of aluminum and glass. But Leo doesn't back down. He doubles down. He claims it's a megabyte-sized dog with high-tech tastes.
And we learn from Higgins' reaction that this is a pattern of escalating surrealism. Higgins reminds Leo that last week his essay was supposedly stolen by a rogue mime.
A rogue mime.
Yeah, and the week before that, the assignment evaporated due to global warming.
A rogue mime running away silently into an invisible wind with a history essay. I mean, the imagery alone is so audacious.
It's absurd.
It reminds me of a PR spin doctor dealing with a catastrophic corporate disaster. Imagine a company spills 1 million gallons of oil into the ocean, and the PR rep gets on national television and earnestly explains that they are generously lubricating the ocean to help the fish swim faster.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's exactly the energy.
It is so wildly brazen that the audience's brain just stalls out. You almost forget to be angry because you are trying to process the sheer audacity of the lie. But looking at this dynamic, I have to wonder, what is Leo actually trying to achieve here? He can't possibly think Higgins believes a cyberdog ate his MacBook.
Oh, he absolutely knows Higgins doesn't believe him. The factual truth of the excuse is entirely irrelevant to Leo's strategy.
So what's the point?
The goal is cognitive disruption. Think about it. If Leo says, I forgot to do the essay, he hands Higgins all the power. Higgins can easily deliver a 0.
Right, the standard script plays out.
But by introducing a megabyte dog and rogue mimes, Leo is changing the rules of engagement. He is shifting the currency of the classroom from compliance versus punishment to creativity versus critique.
Oh, wow. That's a huge shift.
He is forcing Higgins to engage with the absurdity, which inherently delays the punishment.
But that strategy only works if the authority figure is willing to play in that sandbox. And Higgins realizes that arguing about the dietary habits of a fictional cyberdog is a losing battle. He shuts down the theater and drags the confrontation right back onto his turf.
Which is the academics.
Right. He threatens Leo with an immediate 0 unless Leo can explain the first law of thermodynamics right then and there.
This is a phenomenal pedagogical countermove. Higgins is calling Leo's bluff.
Oh, totally.
He is essentially saying, you want to prove how intellectually superior you are with these elaborate surrealist narratives? Prove you possess actual academic substance? Let's see if your brain works when it's not inventing excuses.
And Leo steps up to the plate. He easily recites the physics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, it only changes form.
Nailed it.
But the genius isn't that he knows the definition. It's how he instantly weaponizes that scientific law to justify his own behavior.
The pivot here is incredible.
He tells Higgins that because energy can't be destroyed, his lack of effort on the history essay isn't laziness, it's conserved energy. He claims he's being eco-friendly.
He is deploying a highly sophisticated cross-disciplinary metaphor there. He is utilizing a foundational concept of physics to build an impenetrable defense for his failure in a history class.
Which is just wild to think about from a teenager.
From a cognitive standpoint, this is incredibly complex. To pull that off, a student has to not only understand the physics, but also understand how to map that abstract concept of energetic conservation onto human behavioral psychology in real time.
It's so brilliant that even Higgins has to pause. He literally calls it the most brilliant load of nonsense he's heard in 20 years.
A high compliment, really.
Yeah, and he tells Leo that if he applied half that mental horsepower to his actual studies, he'd be running NASA.
Which is the universal lament of every mentor dealing with a gifted underachiever. They see the raw processing power and are just so frustrated by the misapplication of it.
But Leo dismisses the idea of NASA entirely. He claims his space program is too stressful, and he prefers his role as a stay-at-home philosopher. He even takes a shot at the subject of history itself, arguing that the people in the textbooks are dead, and we should just let them rest in peace.
And Higgins counters that beautifully, grounding that lofty philosophical debate in stark practical reality.
How so?
Well, he points out that the reason we study history is to avoid repeating past mistakes. Mistakes like Leo thinking he can pass a class without opening a single book.
Ouch.
Right. Higgins uses the curriculum itself to drag the high-flying evasion back down to the very real threat of a failing grade.
I am marveling at Leo's mental agility. I really am. But if you strip away the charm, I have to push back on Leo's entire operating system here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If this kid has the raw cognitive bandwidth to mentally spar with a veteran teacher on thermodynamics, the ethics of eco-friendliness, and the philosophical value of studying the past, isn't this whole conserve energy routine a tragic waste of potential?
Oh, absolutely.
It feels like he is hiding behind his wit because the prospect of applying actual effort is somehow terrifying to him.
You've just identified the core psychological mechanism of self-handicapping.
Self-handicapping.
Yeah, in psychology, self-handicapping is a cognitive strategy where people create artificial obstacles and excuses for themselves so that they can avoid blaming their actual ability if they fail.
So they build in a safety net.
Exactly. Think of it like playing a competitive video game. but you deliberately choose to play blindfolded or with a broken controller.
Right, because if you lose with a broken controller, it's the controller's fault. You don't have to admit you're bad at the game. But if you somehow win, you look like an absolute legend.
Precisely. If Leo actually sits down, does the research, writes a thoughtful essay on the impact of industrialization, and receives a C- that is a devastating blow to his ego.
Yeah, that would hurt.
Because it means the limit of his intelligence has been quantified and found lacking. But if he never writes the essay because a rogue mime stole it, his actual intellect is never tested on paper. He remains a theoretical genius.
Oh, wow. So the wit is just a defense mechanism to protect a fragile ego from vulnerability.
Exactly. He's terrified of finding out he might just be average.
He's weaving a bulletproof vest out of punchlines. So if he tries and fails, it's an existential threat. If he fails on purpose with theatrical flair, he retains complete control of his own narrative.
And Higgins, being an experienced educator, understands this psychology perfectly. He recognizes that the confrontation has reached a stalemate.
Because logic won't work.
Logic has failed. Threats of detention have failed. Because Leo does not value conventional metrics of success. You cannot threaten a self-handicapper with a bad grade because they have already factored the bad grade into their protective strategy.
So Higgins has to change the game entirely. Realizing the official rulebook is useless against Leo's armor, he pivots to a high-stakes, humor-based wager to break the deadlock.
Which is a brilliant risk.
It is. He offers a deal. He says if Leo answers one question correctly, he gets a full extension on the essay. If he fails, he spends a month cleaning the chalkboards.
And Leo's reaction is instantaneous. He says, I like those odds. Shoot. Notice how the entire atmosphere shifts there.
Tension drops.
Yeah, this is no longer an adversarial dynamic of teacher punishing student. Higgins has framed it as two intellectual equals making a gentleman's bet. He has spoken to Leo in his own language.
So the question Higgins poses is incredibly loaded. He asks, what is the hardest thing to find in this classroom?
Ooh.
And the script describes the classroom going dead silent. The tension spikes again. Leo's looking around, cataloging the books, the windows, the clock. And we know that Higgins' intended correct answer is your focus.
Right. Higgins is laying a psychological trap. He is using the format of a riddle to try and force Leo into a moment of genuine self-awareness. He wants the wager to end with Leo vocalizing his own fundamental flaw.
But Leo sidesteps the trap beautifully. He guesses, your sense of humor on a Monday morning.
Ha!
Higgins bites the inside of his cheek, tries not to laugh, tells him he's incorrect, and reveals the intended answer was focus. But before Higgins can drop the hammer and hand out the chalkboard cleaning duty, Leo interrupts.
Of course he does.
He says he has a much more accurate answer. The hardest thing to find in the classroom is the end of this conversation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are witnessing the exact neurology of laughter in a high-stakes negotiation.
Okay, break that down.
Laughter is not just a polite social reaction. It is an involuntary physiological response to a cognitive shift. When a brain is engaged in a conflict, the amygdala, which is the threat detection center, is highly active. Adrenaline is pumping. The brain is preparing for a fight.
And a disciplinary meeting is the definition of a high-threat environment. Both parties definitely have their shields up.
Exactly. But when Leo delivers that punchline, he creates a sudden, unexpected shift in perspective. The brain encounters the incongruity of the joke, processes it, and realizes the threat is actually a moment of play.
It reevaluates the situation.
Yes, and the brain instantly releases a rush of endorphins and dopamine. This neurological cocktail physically overrides the stress response. By making Higgins laugh, Leo entirely diffuses the biological tension of the conflict. He forces an emotional connection that logic, rules, and authority simply cannot achieve.
And we see that play out physically. Higgins sighs, checks the clock, and finally breaks. He laughs out loud, and he gives Leo the win.
He had to.
He grants the extension until the next day, and he even participates in the world building. He warns Leo that if the essay isn't on his desk tomorrow, he's going to personally interview the megabyte dog.
See, Higgins is rewarding the quick thinking there. He recognizes the intellectual agility required to navigate that trap, and he validates it. It demonstrates a dynamic built on mutual respect. He knows Leo requires a highly specific, engaging challenge, not just strict punitive authority.
So Leo takes the deal, promising to keep his cyberdog on a low-carb, no-laptop diet, and bolts out the door at the bell. Higgins is left shaking his head, predicting the kid's going to end up as either a high-powered lawyer or a professional comedian.
Probably accurate.
But here's where it gets really interesting. If we pull back and look at the actual scoreboard of this interaction, didn't Higgins just get totally played?
Interesting. Break down the metrics for me. Why do you say that?
Let's review the hard facts. Leo arrived late.
Yep.
He produced 0% of the required work. He derailed the entire lesson plan with a hallucinated cyber dog. He openly mocked the value of studying history.
Oh, so true.
And after all of that, he walked out the door with the exact outcome he wanted from the beginning. An extension on his essay with absolutely no tangible punishment. The teacher tore up his own syllabus because a teenager had good comedic timing.
Well, if you are evaluating this purely from a metric of strict administrative compliance, then yes, Higgins lost the negotiation. He folded. He allowed a subordinate to break the established rules and evade consequence simply because the subordinate was highly entertaining.
The charm offensive was a total victory.
It was. However, if you evaluate this from a developmental and psychological standpoint, Higgins actually secured a massive victory.
How so?
Think about the alternative. If Higgins had simply pointed to the rulebook, handed Leo a 0, and assigned a detention, Leo would have completely shut down.
Ah, right, the self-handicapping.
Yes, the self-handicapping ego would have registered the authority figure as an adversary, and Leo would have disengaged from the class permanently.
He would have just mentally checked out for the rest of the semester.
Exactly. Instead, Higgins managed to take a highly defensive, unmotivated student and trick him into actively participating in a high-level intellectual debate covering physics, philosophy, and historical relevance.
He tricked him into learning.
Yes, he forced Leo to think on his feet under pressure. And most importantly, he secured a verbal, negotiated contract for the essay to be delivered tomorrow. He traded a momentary, minor disciplinary victory for a major, long-term victory in student engagement.
He essentially lassoed Leo's chaotic, evasive energy and channeled it into a structured agreement. He kept the kid in the game.
And he preserved the relationship. By turning the discipline into a battle of wits, Higgins proved to Leo that he is an authority figure worth respecting because he's an authority figure who can actually keep up.
That makes a lot of sense. So what does this all mean? For you listening, how do we take the surreal antics of the Chronicles of Leo and apply them to the real world?
The mechanics we've discussed today are incredibly potent tools for any high-stakes conversation.
Definitely. First, we have the power of creative reframing. When you find yourself in a deficit, how you choose to label that deficit entirely changes the narrative. You aren't feeling, you are conserving energy.
Right. Second, pushing the boundary of a conversation by pivoting to an area where you hold the structural advantage can alter the entire power dynamic of a room.
And above all, we see the strategic deployment of humor to diffuse neurological tension.
Because humor is not just an icebreaker. It is a profound negotiation tactic. It bypasses the brain's threat detection systems, lowers defensive walls, creates a shared reality, and can instantly turn an adversary into a willing collaborator.
Now, a quick disclaimer for the learner. If you miss a major deadline at work, we do not advise you to walk into your boss's office and claim a rogue mime stole your quarterly financial report.
Yeah, please don't do that.
That is probably a fast track to a meeting with HR. But the underlying mechanics, the ability to think on your feet, to creatively reframe a failure, and to find the humanity and humor in a tense standoff, those skills are universally applicable.
The mechanics used to evade rules are often the exact same cognitive mechanics required for high-level innovation. Both require looking at a rigid, established set of rules and asking, how can I bend this reality to better suit my needs?
Which brings us to a final, somewhat provocative thought to leave you with today. It builds perfectly on Leo's theory of conserved energy.
Okay, I'm ready.
If you really think about the sheer amount of mental horsepower Leo expended during that single classroom interaction, he was working incredibly hard.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. He debated complex thermodynamics. He crafted elaborate science fiction metaphors on the fly. He sparred with a hostile authority figure. And he executed high-wire comedic timing just to save his own skin.
The cognitive load of that performance was massive.
Exactly. If Leo is this incredibly sharp, creative, and exhausted from inventing these complex, multi-layered excuses, isn't he actually working far harder at avoiding the work than the actual history essay would have required?
Without a doubt.
Sitting down and writing a paper on industrialization is objectively easier than defending the dietary needs of a megabyte dog under hostile questioning.
It is the ultimate tragic irony of the creative underachiever. They expend genius-level effort to avoid average-level tasks.
But it raises a profound question for you to mull over as you go about your week. What if some of human history's greatest, most paradigm-shifting innovations didn't actually stem from a noble desire to work hard?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
What if they came from a profound, highly creative, deeply ingrained desire to simply avoid doing the things we don't want to do? Where might your own laziness or your own innate desire to conserve your energy actually be the very engine sparking your most creative problem solving?
Laziness as the mother of invention. It's a really powerful reframing of human progress.
So the next time you find yourself staring down a strict rule book or an ironclad expectation that feels impossible to meet, remember that reality and authority are often much more malleable than they appear.
Very sure.
Sometimes the most brilliant path forward isn't following the jagged white line of compliance. Sometimes it's realizing the rules are just a suggestion, and the person across the table is just waiting for you to tell a really good story. Until next time, keep diving deep.